Hello and welcome to this lecture on socket programming. So in this one, you're going to learn a lot of cool stuff. You're going to learn what socket programming is. In case you didn't know, you're going to know how clients talk to servers and to other clients as well. You're going to learn about the TCP protocol, which stands for Transmission Control Protocol, its properties, and to get started with socket programming, I'm going to teach you how TCP works, namely the TCP Socket Flow. Next, we're going to learn how to connect to an existing server, let's say Google, and then we're going to teach you how to create your own server using a Python script and another script which is a client so that you can use it to connect to your own server and to many other servers. So sockets and the socket API are used to send messages across a network. They provide a form of IPC, which stands for inter-process communication. The network can be a logical one or one that's physically connected to an external network with its own connections to other networks. Now, one clear example is the internet, where you can connect by your internet service provider, the ISP. So methods connecting you to the internet, or to be more precise, to a server, requires so-called socket programming. So socket programming is a way of connecting two nodes on a network to communicate with each other. So to think about it, think of yourself right here with your mobile device, right? And you're connected to, let's say, a Wi-Fi, right? Which enables you, the client, so you're the client. This will enable you to connect to a certain server, right? So you, the client, and the server are two nodes, or sockets. So one socket listens on a particular port. So another keyword here is port. Think about a port as the port that you know, right? Say you have a port and there's multiple, ships, and each one is allowed to have, an allocated area for them. So think about each one of those as a port. So one socket listens on a particular port at an IP address, while other socket reaches out to the other to form a connection. So one socket listens on a particular port at an IP address. The server will act as a listener. It listens to sockets whenever a client reaches out to it. So when you're trying to connect to this server, the server is in fact listening at one or multiple ports, and you will connect to the server at one port to talk to the server in case you want some information, some files, and maybe even to connect to another client. So you're not going to connect to another client. Let's say this is client 2 and your client 1. And this client is also trying to connect to the server. And you're trying to talk to client 2, I don't know, you're chatting with each other, stuff like that. So all this happens through a server. And thanks to socket programming, communication between clients and servers are possible. So to see the hierarchy of how this is established, we need to understand the TCP protocol. TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol. So I might as well erase protocol here. I don't want to be redundant. So TCP is one of the main protocols of the Internet Protocol suite. Other related protocols are the UDP, DCCP, RSVP, and many others. Of course, we're on the transport layer here. Of course, in socket programming, you could choose other protocols, but the default one is set to TCP. Now, why should you use TCP? Now, TCP is reliable because packets that are dropped in the network due to channel conditions, let's say the packet was not well received to the other node, those packets that are dropped are actually detected. So the node that is sending the packet could actually know, if it's using the TCP, that this packet is not received. And thus, it could retransmit the packet to the intended node. So back to this example right here. Let's say I send a packet, right? This is a packet. And due to some channel conditions, so all this is the channel, the packet was received erroneously, which means a lot of bits in the packet were not received correctly, or was not received at all. So something happened on the way and the packet got lost. Well, if you're using TCP, you, client 1, could know about this thing. Whereas if you're using UDP, you cannot. They're not reliable. And another thing why you'd want to use TCP is that it has the property of in-order data delivery. So that being said, data is read by your application in the order it was written by the sender. So back to this example, let's say I've sent packet 1, then packet 2, in that order. So if I drew it in that way, it means packet 1 was sent before packet 2. Well, guess what? The server is going to receive packet 1 before packet 2. In some applications, this is critical. Actually, this is crucial. You don't want to, when you're talking to client 2, let's say packet 1 contains the following message, hi, right? And the second one contains, I don't know, bye, right? You don't want client 2 to receive bye before hi. It doesn't make sense. So, yeah, this application, this is crucial. In other applications where, let's say, you're downloading a file from a server, you'd want to use UDP. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the TCP Socket Flow. So when you're socket programming, you'd want to keep the following flow in mind. So what happens here is that you've got a server and you've got the client, right? So the server initially creates a socket, then binds it to a specific IP and port so that it can listen to incoming requests on that IP. So it then listens on that port. So at this point right here, it's listening to any incoming connections, right? The client, on the other hand, to connect to a server, of course, it has to open a socket first and then ask for a connection. The keyword here is ask. So how is this asking happening? How is it going to happen? So this in TCP, this is accomplished using the three-way handshake. So at this point, when the client wants to connect, it sends, there's communication between the client and the server using the three-way handshake method. The client first sends a SYN, and then the server replies with an ACK. SYN stands for synchronization, and ACK stands for acknowledgement. And once the client receives the ACK, it sends another SYN, and that's it. You've got the three-way handshake. This is it. After the three-way handshake, now the client and the server are ready to talk to each other. So let's say the client starts by sending something, so send something, right? Got a packet to send, and the server will receive, and the server will receive. So this guy right here, sending something, right? And in case the server wants to send something to the client, I don't know, like a reception that, oh, I've got what you sent me, or I want to send you a file or an image coming from client 2, maybe. I'm in the sending process. So I've also got something to send you. Are you willing to receive it? So I'll send it. And the client will happily receive it. Now, something really important here is to note that the send and receive process is actually in a loop. So I'm going to draw an arrow here, and to mimic that, I'm actually in a loop. for both the server and the client. And after that, if the client wants to close the session or a communication, the client is going to politely ask to close the session, meaning that I'm done. I don't have anything to send you and I don't want to receive anything. That's it. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep. So the client is going to send a close message to close everything, and the server will receive. After that, server closes. This is the TCP Socket Flow. Really simple, really easy to keep in mind. And now, without further ado, let's program this on Python. So I've got VS Code open right here. And before we go ahead and create a client and a server where the client can talk to the server, I'm going to create a simple client that connects to an existing server. So I'm going to create a new file and call it client to existing server.py, right? And the modules that you want to import, let me enlarge the font. So the modules that you want to import are the socket and the sys. Then you're going to try to connect to an existing server. So for that, we're going to create a socket, right? So socket.socket. And the simplest socket that you can create is by passing the following parameters. So socket.af_inet and socket.sock_stream. Now, AF_inet refers to the address family of IPv4. We all know that the IP address family is of two versions, v4 and v6. We're going to limit ourselves to v4. And the second parameter here, which is sock_stream, means that we're going to use the TCP protocol. Second, if a socket is created, we're going to print socket has been created. Now else, if we catch an error, socket.error, as err, you can name this as you wish, because this is the variable that's going to hold the message of the error right here. I'm going to print socket was not created due to the following error. This is string concatenation plus err. I'm going to concatenate it on top of the preceding message. Okay, at this point, if possible, a socket is created. And the default port that we're going to listen to is 80. This is a default port. Then again, we're going to try to connect to the server. So right here, you'd want to specify to which server you want to connect. So socket, I'm going to connect to the simplest server, which is google.com. I'm going to store the socket in host. Now, if I was not able to connect to the server, maybe because I'm not connected to my Wi-Fi or there's no connection or server is down, I'm going to print could not connect to the desired server. And then I'm going to exit the system. And finally, you're ready to connect. So s.connect to host and port. So you should pass it the host and the port. And finally, let's print a message that we're done. The socket has been connected to the server on port. Now let's run this. There you have it. Socket has been created. The socket has been connected to the server on port. This is the IP address. Now, you could also have done this using the terminal by the traditional ping, google.com, and there you go. The pinging is successful. So if the pinging is successful, means your program should work. We run it again and again and again. Okay? Now I'm going to turn off my Wi-Fi and I'm going to run There you have it. Could not connect to the desired server. I'm going to try to get the type of error. So socket.gai error as err. And I'm going to print the error right here. Run. Node name or serve name provided or not known. This is error number 8. You can go ahead to the documentation and read about error number 8. I'm going to connect again to my Wi-Fi. I'm connected. Run, and everything is back to normal. So with this simple script, we've seen how to create a socket, set the default port, then create a socket for the server to connect to, and that's it. Now we're ready to create our own server and then another client to connect to it. So I'm going to go to my folder and create a new file, call it server.py. So to create a server, first thing you'd want to do is import the socket module. Next, as we did previously, we're going to have to open a socket and just a message. We're going to print socket has been successfully created. Next, I'm going to define a random port, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, since this is a server, we haven't seen it before, we're going to bind. So don't forget here the method bind. So in Python, the bind is actually a method, and the description is found here. So it binds the socket to a local address. For IP sockets, the address is a pair host port, as we saw here. So host and port. For the IP address, I'm going to leave it empty, so an empty string, since we're not going to dedicate to a specific client. No, we're going to listen to requests coming from all computers on a specific port, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then I'm going to print a message right here saying socket has been binded to this port. Now we're going to put the socket in listening mode. So this step right here, we're going to listen to incoming requests. To accomplish this, you're going to have to use the listen method. So that's why this flow right here is really important. The names or the methods that we're doing have the same names in Python, and in particular in the socket module. So listen, we're going to pass it a backlog. So if backlog is specified, it must be at least 0. If it is lower, it is set to 0. It specifies the number of unaccepted connections that the system will allow before refusing new connections. So I'll set this to 6 and print socket is now listening, just to keep track, just for debugging. And now we're going to create a loop, which is here, right? So while true, an infinite loop, let's pinpoint here. So we're going to establish a connection with the client, send a message to the client, and then close the current connection with the client, right? So what are the methods that we're going to use here? First, we're going to accept, right? And for that, the accept returns 2 things. The socket object, right? And the address. So as we read the description here, it waits for an incoming connection. It returns a new socket representing the connection and the address of the client. So how cool is that? So let's return those. I'm going to return sock and client address as such. And print, let's print a message here saying connected to the following address. Then we're going to send a message. So sock.send, we're going to send a message to this socket, means to the client, saying thank you for connecting. the smiley face. And last but not least, we're going to have to close the connection. Okay? So if I run this, nothing fancy is going to happen. It's just a server that is listening, right? So run, there's an error here. Oh, so it's just a concatenation error. So right here, the port is a number, okay? So I'll just cast it as a string. Run, and we're now listening. Socket is now listening. So it's now in this infinite loop, and notice here that the program has not stopped due to the infinite loop. So things are running properly. Now, while my server is running, I'm going to create my client. So let's save this as client.py. And first things first, I'm going to import the socket module. Then I'm going to create a socket object, and I'm going to listen to port 1234. So this has to be the same as this, because this is the port the server is listening at. And then I'm going to try to connect with an IP address. Now here you cannot leave it empty, you have to enter something. So I'm going to enter a default 127.0.0.1 via this port 1234. And now, since I'm connected to the server, I'm going to print the message that I'm going to receive, which is this. Thank you for connecting. So I'm not going to print thank you for connecting. No, I'm going to instead print s.receive. I'm going to have to specify here a buffer size. So the default is 1024 bytes. Last but not least, I'm going to close the connection. s.close. So since I'm using this IDE, I don't know how to run two scripts. So for that, I'm going to use the terminal. So terminal right here. So make sure you navigate towards your directory. So my directory is located here. It's in this path. So cd to it. Okay, I'm in. And now I'm going to run the client script. So Python client.py, the name of the file. Run. And there is an error. Oh. So the error here is that this is not a string. So I'll cast it as a string. Sorry about that. I'll run the server again. And there you go. Back here, run the client. And there you have it. So what just happened here? The server is still running. Notice here that the server has printed connected to this IP address right here via this port, right? So if I run this again, get another number, and again, and again. I could open multiple clients and run this. So I'm going to copy this path to open a new terminal, which will be my other client, and run another client here. So Python client.py. Thank you for connecting. And here it is. Let me connect here. There you go. So the server is able to receive multiple connections on the same port. Not simultaneous, but successive. So this client talks. There you have it. This client talks again. There you have it. Okay? So this is all you need to know to get started with socket programming. Congratulations, you can now create your own server. You can start accepting connections from clients all around the world. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this video useful, please consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. If you have any comments, you can leave them in the comment section below and I'll respond to them as soon as possible. I'll see you then.